I know I've heard of this aquaponics thing, and I was thinking Epcot, Walt Disney, you see plants hanging down, and it's a root-based system with no soil. It's continuously fed into water. But actually, aquaponics involves fish. So, Jeremy, you have an aquaponics greenhouse, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I'm going to sell it. Well, actually, I mean, so I have about probably close to 30 fish right now, and they're in about 300 gallons of water that gets pumped to grow beds that then have various things growing into them. I think right now we have like lettuce and turnips, or lettuce and some basil and some other things. But then in there is also earthworms that break down the fish poop, and then it creates nutrients for the plants to uptake. Mm-hmm. But I thought it would be great to become self-sufficient a handful of years ago, and it is nice eating the things that you produce. That tastes amazing. I haven't killed one of the fish yet, although I'm thinking about it pretty soon. But there's nothing better tasting than homegrown vegetation. It's just I heard you and Chris's talk last week about how possibly I might be thinking that have been scammed, and I'm starting to I guess follow along with that conclusion that it's too much. It's just it's impossible to become self-sufficient in these days. Like it's impossible.
I'm drawing a memory blank. You're saying that I suggested that you're being scammed?
Oh yeah. Last week you and Chris were talking, and you brought up my name specifically. You said, "Oh, Jeremy has an aquaponics system, and we've been talking about this, blah blah blah, and I think that he might be coming to the conclusion that he's been scammed or something."
Oh, okay.
Right, that you have to go back and forth to work all the time and do that.
Yeah.
In your free time, and how overwhelming that is. Yeah, I remember that.
It's 100%. Yeah, that's correct. It is overwhelming, and I guess one of the ways I justified it at first was where I work. They promote that you should have like the simplest life possible, pretty much. Like live a simple life. Like no. I mean, they don't come out and say no pets, but that type of thing. And so I just felt like I was bucking the system type of a deal, and it's too much work.
So what's the hardest part? What's the most amount of work with aquaponics?
Well, it's not just the aquaponics. I'm just talking about the whole farm thing in general. But the aquaponics, I mean, for me at least, being in upstate New York, it's trying to keep up with the temperatures, and just basically mimicking nature is the hard thing. Mm-hmm. Trying to keep the temperatures and humidity constant.
So you don't have an automated system then?
I mean, it's somewhat automated. The humidity controls broke last year, so that's not working. But being automated though, once October, November comes around, there's only so much electricity I can throw at it before it just becomes ridiculous.
So for those who are new to this, and I am new to this, I didn't have any idea that fish were involved in this system. I think I've got like three quick points which explain, and you tell me if it's wrong. 3 quick points which explain what aquaponics is really about. So basically you're taking fish that are in an aquarium, and if they're able to swim in their poop and pee, it's basically toxic. But when you take that toxic water and you pump it through a tube, and then you throw that into a tray of plants like herbs and lettuce and tomatoes, etc., that actually has beneficial bacteria, and it kind of breaks down, and instead of it being toxic, it actually converts into like nitrates, and then that's absorbed into the food, the plants, much like fertilizer, much like when you go to a farm and they they spray cow manure on everything. I mean, everything. So that's kind of part 2. And then the third part is there's some sort of drainage system that uses whether it's some kind of medium like charcoal or shale.
Recycled glass and clay medium.
So this clay medium acts as a super filter, and then a buffer, and then it takes that water, which was once toxic, it cleans it, and then the final phase of this closed loop system is that I'm just trying to figure this out. So then that water is now clean, and that's put back into the fish tank.
Right. Yep. So I it's been a while since I read the technicalities, but yeah, it breaks down into like nitrites and nitrates. I believe it's the ammonia that does that, and then the plants can uptake one of the type that is then dangerous to the fish. And there being earthworms in there, that creates oxygen as well. But yeah, it basically cleanses the water from. It's like an ecosystem, basically a closed loop ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. And it uses roughly about 5% of the water that typical farming would use.
Yeah, there's very little loss due to it basically condensating in my greenhouse. That's one of the problems I have is the mold. Basically, it's hard to evacuate the air while maintaining temperature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now, of course, I live in farm communities. I live next to Amish people, and I just took a trip from the health food store today, and I just saw one farm after another, and I was looking at the plants that were grown in the soil. And when you compare the plants that are grown in the soil compared to the plants that are grown the way you're doing it, it's really night and day. I mean, the plants out in the outside elements have tons of bugs, attacking it, tons of weeds. They're using chemicals, and the food doesn't really look all that appetizing. Yet every time I see a video, and all I did yesterday was go one video after another. I've accumulated those videos, and you can get access to those videos if you go, once again, to truthin7minutes.com and click on the vault, show you how to get access to those. I took all the ones that I looked at. There were some that were hours long, and I took the best of the best, and I've got those. But when you compare the outside traditional gardening to what you're doing right now, it's really night and day. I mean, it's superior food, right?
Well, I've found that I definitely have to supplement with nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I did a pure hydroponic system without the fish, I could produce better vegetables and fruits.
That's interesting. Why do you think that?
I have.
Hmm.
The fish, because with the fish you have to maintain. There's a balance between the pH that the fish like and the pH that the vegetables like.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas without the fish, you can bring the pH down to, I think hydroponically plants grow best at around like 5.6 to 6.0 pH.
Really?
And and the fish don't like that much. And so I've grown much superior vegetables with just hydroponic. The fish is, the fish thing is like a kind of like a cool wow factor thing, but I can't grow nearly as good with the fish in there.
Now, so if you were hydroponics as opposed to aquaponics, where there's no fish, you would use a heck of a lot more water. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, actually, you would usually do a full flush anywhere from a week to 2 weeks out. Every week or every 2 weeks, you would do a full flush of your water, your reservoir water and nutrient solution, as opposed to this recirculating it.
Mm-hmm. So, do the fish actually provide that much in the way of nutrition to the plant, or is that a gimmick?
I think they do. They do provide nutrition. Whether or not I have all the correct bacteria able to break it down in this little mini ecosystem is another question. It just seems like something, I don't know, something's not quite perfect with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's something missing from a lot of the articles I've read. It's iron, but that doesn't seem to be it from the experiments I've done. It doesn't seem to help that much.
But again, when I look at these videos and I look at stuff that's grown indoors, there's virtually no weeds. You can one tip that I picked up is that you want to use ladybugs to take care of. I forget what the word is that grows on plants. Ladybugs
and praying mantises are amazing beneficial insects.
So with all that, the food just literally looks perfect compared to it being outside.
I've grown some amazing vegetables. Yeah.
Outside or inside?
Inside.
Yeah,
inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you're saying because you live in upstate New York, your growing season doesn't go throughout the wintertime because it doesn't get warm enough?
What I was saying is that it's not feasible to continue this in a greenhouse in upstate New York for just an individual like myself. It costs too much to heat to keep the fish happy.
Mm-hmm.
And like last year I moved the whole operation indoors to my garage, and that basically caused so much, there was so much condensation that all the corners in my garage were molding, like the walls, the paint.
Gotcha.
So it's tough. It's tough playing Mother Nature.
Is it possible if you had a bunch of money to throw at this that you could have the fish be perhaps in a basement type of situation, which is more temperate? And
if you had all the money to throw at it, yeah, I could have huge, dehumidifiers and whatnot. But the one I was running just wasn't cutting it, basically.
So you would basically have the fish it has to be in the shade, basically. Obviously, the plants like the sun, that would be outside in the greenhouse. And you would just run lines between the two?
Well, the fish, actually, the way I have them, the grow beds are on top of the tank. Mm-hmm. So the fish don't see light, but the plants do. Everything's in my greenhouse.
Gotcha.
The water tank and the grow beds are in my greenhouse.
But you can't have the fish in the wintertime in your greenhouse. It's not warm enough, you're saying?
Correct. Yes.
Uh-huh.
So I had to bring them into my garage.
And I can see that being a pain in the neck.
Yes. And that's where it was creating too much mold.
Gotcha. So are you seriously contemplating discontinuing this?
Yes. I mean, I enjoy it, but yeah, it's too tough. When I look at other climates, if I was down in South Carolina or something, it might be a different story. But up here, it's just too expensive to maintain.
Mm-hmm. Guys, you have any questions or thoughts about aquaponics?
I've always been interested in this. I heard about it a couple years back, and I've never looked into it. I knew basically the concept behind it, but I didn't know it was this intricate and so much work.
Yeah, I've been the same. The things that I have looked at don't look anywhere near as complicated, and they all say that everything's going to be, in balance and sort itself out. Where I live, we never get snow, so it would probably work better for us. I have seen a very inexpensive way to get heat for something like that is to use a kind of a covered up burner. Like you dig a big hole and you cover it over the top and you burn wood in it. And
it's called a jet stove, I think.
That's it. That's it. The guy that runs Half Past Human was flogging them at one stage.
Very time consuming though, feeding it.
Yeah, very cheap though, he said.
Oh yes, yep, very cheap but just time consuming.
Does this be a rocket stove?
Rocket stove, yes, rocket stove, rocket fuel stove. Yep. Yeah, there's actually I think they used to use similar designs in Korea. When building homes, they would run that, I guess it's called a flue maybe, all the way underneath the house, or build the house above these flues. So when, they'd feed the fire and then the hot air would be sucked all the way underneath their house and then out a vent basically, or out a chimney on the other side. It's like radiant heat kind of.
Yeah, because I think I assume the fumes would be toxic.
Right, yep. Yeah, it's got to be exhausted outside. But it's like a cheap radiant heat.
And so it's really a matter of making sure that the nutrients are going through.
Yeah, it seems like when I first started it up, the plants were doing great, but then after a while it seems like there's some type of nutrient deficiencies, and that's the hard part, is just figuring out what you need to do to balance everything out.
So, not wanting to divert the topic too much, but for another time, human manure, of course, gets carefully collected and sent out to sea. which obviously is a waste of a massive resource, especially as we go to a lot of effort to collect it all together. But presumably that could happen in an aquaponics system, could it?
Yeah, actually, that's interesting, Frank. I worked at a wastewater plant for a year and a half, and one of our assistant chief at the time actually he was trying to do kind of like a case study, but he did a half-assed job doing it, and they were growing vegetables in human waste. I don't think anyone ate them, but they grew pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be commonplace. Of course, the Chinese did it for a long, long time. I don't know if they still do it, and it might have to be a project for you, Jim.
Yeah, they do. They do. They still, in the poorer areas, they collect waste, night water, as it's called.
Yeah.
Wow, night water. Interesting.
Because it's always, I mean, I actually, I know it sounds like I seem to have done everything, but I did actually run the operations of quite a large fertilizer company in Australia for a period of time. And I always was amazed as to why we went to this enormous effort to install porcelain collection points in every house, really carefully collected into one place, and then very carefully and brilliantly throw it out to sea.
Mm-hmm.
A very strange,
yeah,
a very strange situation.
Yeah, because what is it that makes our waste so different?
Well, in fact, our waste is probably really, really, really valuable. In fact. So it is all a bit odd.
I think you got a point there, Frank.
Speaking of safety, if you type in aquaponics and safety, you'll see one scaremongering PDF after another. What do you think about that, Jeremy? Do you think that's just scaremongering, or is there any truth to that?
What are we looking at specifically?
That's a good question. Let me pull it up here. Foods. Here we go. Take a look at this. Boom. Aquaponics and food safety from Lethbridge, Alberta. Is that in Canada? I'm assuming so.
This is a PDF, yeah?
PDF, yep. And they're quoting Albert Einstein, who was a fraud, a plagiarist, the person who worked in the patent office and stole all the patents for his members of his club.
It's not opening for me for some reason. Can you give us a breakdown?
It's very long. It's let's see. It's let's say 100 pages. Introduction. Aquaculture provides approximately 20 million of the 140 million metric tons of fish and shellfish consumed in the world annually. Blah blah blah. In North America, species of fish are reared by blah blah blah. It really doesn't say.
Well, nearly all this is more aquaculture, I think. Nearly all the prawns that we have in Australia come from aquaculture. A lot of them from Vietnam, tiger prawns and so on.
So that's farming fish, right? Farmed fish.
Farming fish and shellfish, yeah.
Yeah.
And it is a massive pollutant.
And why is that?
Because of the waste. You know, they have to feed them and fertilize them and so on, and the fish just create a mess. Mm-hmm. And that water something has to happen to it.
I was reading
an article.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
I was just going to say I read an article about that, and they had a couple pictures. It's pretty gruesome. It's just like a giant puddle, and it's just feces, and there's the shrimp growing in there.
Yeah, I have a book on aquaponics where they were actually raising tilapia, and they had these chicken cages that would extend out above the tilapia ponds, and basically the tilapia would just eat chicken shit. And that sounds extremely disgusting to me, but some countries, I think they're still doing it.
So just quickly scanning this, Marcus, this fellow's saying that aquaponics then takes the aquaculture effluent and uses a tank system to produce manure effluent that is filtered by sand before being used in algal culture or aquaponic systems. Manure solids are used to make organic compost. To date, no disease problem has occurred in this system.
Okay, so then it's a pro aquaponics then.
It would appear so, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I can't open that for some reason.
It looks like quite a good thing too, Jeremy, so well worth reading.
We'll put in the companion notes. Maybe when you click on it from there, you'll be able to see it.
All right.
So the punchline is what?
Punchline is, unless you live in the right geographical location and have the time, it's probably not worth your while. But if you do, then, like I said, I've been able to grow some pretty amazing vegetables. It's just very time consuming, and, if you can't survive through the winter, don't even try.